Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town of Milton Planning Board monthly meeting for June 2021. Ms. Blanchard, would you please call the attendance of the board?
Mr. Marzicano?
Here.
Ms. Padula?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
He was online, but he's not at the moment.
Ms. Vendiza?
Here.
Mrs. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Will?
Here.
Chairman Barto?
Here. Okay, and I would also note that we have in attendance our counsel, Bill Kennery, our Director of Planning and Codes, Bill Lewis, our Board Secretary, Tina Blanchard, and Clerk to the Planning Board, Patty Nealon. Mr. Marzicano, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Got David at the elements of the list of chat. Okay, I have just a couple of announcements for this evening. First, Mr. Lewis and I met with representatives of the Tilson Group. Mr. Mandel, could you please mute your line? You're getting background interference. We met with the Tilson Group on Friday, June 11th. The Tilson Group is representing the Parallel Infrastructure and AT&T Wireless for a possible cellular tower on the property of Lee Ostro, 6650 Middle Grove Road. I believe Tina shared with you all a couple of the site plan maps they provided us. Bill and I discussed the cellular tower special use permit requirements and what we would require for a complete application. We do not yet have an application, but we may expect one soon. Other than that, I just remind the members of the board that they have continuing education credits due for this year, and there's a lot of online training opportunities. I think I shared one earlier today on seasonal rentals of units. So if you're checking those out, and Tina is going to be asking everybody to kind of document what training you've done so far. So if you could get that to her and any new training you do, she'll keep track of it. I have no audio. Can you hear me, Pat? I don't know why. Pat Collins, can you hear me?
That's good, that's better.
That wasn't me, that was Dave Mandel. Can you hear me, Pat?
No, I have nothing.
I don't know why that's the case. Is that better? Can you hear me now, Pat?
That is good, yes.
Okay, all right, I'm just going to be around that good then. Okay, so back, as I was mentioning, that on June 11th, Bill Lewis and I met with Parallel Infrastructure and AT&T Wireless on a possible cellular tower at Lee Ostro's property at 6650 Middle Grove Road. I believe Tina shared with you a couple of those drawings that they shared with us. There's no application before us yet, but we may expect one soon. Other than that, I remind everybody that they have continuing education credits, and if you could just let Tina know if you've taken any, she's logging that in. We'll be reporting it to the town board as we complete it. We're continuing to meet both in person and remote engagement for project representatives as well as the public. We have a couple opportunities for the public to interface with us this evening, and I'd ask if you're Zooming and with us and want to make a public comment, please use the hand wave feature or indicate in the Q&A that you would like to submit a question. However, we will not accept anonymous questions. If you dialed in, I'd ask you to text Bill Lewis at 518-376-1831 and provide him your name and interest in making a comment, and he'll alert us as to unmute your phone. I don't see anybody that has dialed in yet, though. So the folks that are Zooming and they've got a comment at some point, use the hand wave or Q&A function that is there. As with our usual comment period, we request that you announce yourself, state your address, and then present your comment in 3 minutes or less. First action of the board tonight is the approval of minutes. We have to approve minutes from April 21st and May 27th. So I will entertain a motion to approve the April 21st, 2021 meeting minutes.
John will make that motion. I'll second.
Any discussion, changes, or anything to the minutes of April 21st? There being no discussion, Tina, would you pull the board?
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Mandenza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Second, I'll entertain.
Tina's audio has, I can barely hear her.
Okay, you gotta speak up, Tina.
I'll try. I'm trying to speak up.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the May 19th, 2021 meeting minutes.
John will also make that motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion, corrections, changes? There being none, Tina, please pull the board.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Mandenza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Pat's still having a hard time hearing. Her computer should pick up too.
I can't have mine on because it's going to be feedback.
Okay. All right, at this point, we'll open the meeting to comments from the public. Please note that we have a couple of public hearings this evening as well, so if you've got comments on those projects, please wait until we have the hearing so your remarks will be on the record. Again, I'd ask if you're Zooming and want to make a question, please use the hand wave or Q&A feature. If not, text Bill Lewis at 518-376-1831. Anybody from the public have a comment, remotely or in attendance at this point? There being no comments from the public, we'll close the public comment period at 7:06 p.m. and move to our first project. Our first project this evening is the continued review as well as public hearing for an application for a minor subdivision for Miss Carol Gilday at 3586 Galway Road. There's a number of materials that have been submitted to us, the most recent ones being Saratoga County Planning Board referral stating that the subdivision will have no significant countywide or intercommunity impacts. An email from Michael Hope commenting on the project dated June 10th, 2021, and an email from Howard and Karen Hope commenting on the project dated June 10th, 2021. Mr. Lewis, do you have any comments or information for the board at this time? I believe Mr. Flatley is with us. Do you have any comments that you'd like to bring to the board's attention? He was on there.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, yes, all right. Kevin, do you have anything you want to add at this time?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So right now I will open the public hearing on the Gilday minor subdivision at 7:07 p.m. Is anybody up? Kathy has her hand waved here. Kathy, I've unmuted you. Can you speak? Kathy, you may be muted on your end.
Is that any better?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. My name is Kathy Barner, B-A-R-N-E-R. I live at 26 Lawrence Road, right across the street from the property that you're talking about. And my question is, how many houses are they planning on dividing it into, and where are they putting the driveways, considering that part of the road is very prone to accidents?
So they are proposing 2 lots. You know, there's one now, and they're subdividing it roughly in half. And have you had a chance to see the subdivision plat at all?
No, I have not.
Tina, can you? Oh, you can't. I can pull it up on the screen. Let me see if I can pull this up. on the screen. Hold on a second, I gotta do a thumb drive. I do not have the map electronically. Kevin, can you pull the map? Do you have the capacity to pull the subdivision map up? If I allow you to share it? Panelists should be able to share it. Oh, you're going to hold it that way. Well, it's going to be hard to see it that way. I don't have it electronic.
Is it to the left of the house that is there now? Was that where the new house was built, or was it to the right of the house?
If you're facing the property, looking in a,
To the left or to the right of the house that's in there now, staring at the front of the house?
If
To
you're
the left.
looking at the house, it would be to the left.
Okay.
And the new driveway will run parallel with that existing gravel drive that's there now. Maybe 20 feet away from it.
Okay.
20 feet.
So it's before the curve where all the accidents seem to be happening.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that was my concern. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm fine with that. So it's just one house going in, the driveway won't be on the curve, we should be all set then?
No, yes, the new driveway is proposed. You know where the gravel drive is now? It's going to run parallel with that, maybe 20 feet away from it.
Okay. And will the house be set far back in like the house is now, or will it be up closer to the road?
It'll be at least 150 feet away from the road.
Okay. And that will have a minimum of 5 acres attached to that?
Yes.
6.75.
So they can't build any more than one more house over there, is that correct?
My understanding, yes, the only would prohibit any other houses in the house.
Okay. That's great, that answers all my questions. Thank you so much for clearing that up for me.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any other comment? Anybody in the room have a comment on the project? No other comments? I don't see anybody that has one on. I'm going to make sure everybody's hands down. Dave Mandel, you raised your hand. Do you have a comment on this project?
I'm sorry, I did that inadvertently.
Okay.
I just talked about the US road thing.
Okay, when we get to there, we'll let you. All right, there being no further comment, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the Gilday project at 7:13 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, I
Make that motion to close, Chairman?
Pat Collins?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Does the board have any questions or comments at this point? There being none, Tina, I'll pull the board to close the hearing.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Van Dienzo?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Okay, having duly completed our environmental review and conducted the required public hearing, I will entertain a motion to approve the Gilday application for a minor subdivision.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? There being no discussion, Tina, please poll the board.
Mr. Marsicano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Andinzo?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Okay, our next project this evening, we have Mr. McClanahan and Mr. Dell for an amendment to their site plan and special use permit for 830 Murray Road, community solar farm. Note that our council is stepping down at this point, and Jim Craig has been counsel on this project, but he's not in attendance. The application proposes to expand the solar farm that we approved in June of 2019. This evening, we will continue our review and reconvene the public hearing for May 19th. Everyone has a number of documents on here. I think the only additional document from the May meeting is a copy of the decision from the MIlton Town Planning Board approving the area variance for the project issued on May 28, 2021. Zoning. Mr. McClanahan or Mr. Dell, do you have any new information to present to us this evening?
No, we just wanted to update the board that we did receive the zoning variance at the last meeting.
Okay. So I will now reconvene the hearing for the issuance of a special use permit and site plan approval for Phase 2 of the 830 Murray Road Community Solar Project, and the time is 7:15 p.m. Anybody have any comments? I don't see any of the panelists. Does anybody in the audience have any comments they'd like to make at this time? Go ahead, Mike.
I do.
If you could step up to the mic just so we can.
All right. Hank, how are you? Good to see you. Please. What's up?
Thank you, Chairman Bartow. Good to see the board again as well. Appreciate your time and effort and all this stuff that you do. My name is Mike Munter, for the record. I live at 909 Murray Road, and I'm here tonight on behalf of some of the neighbors out in the area from LaRue Road to Soderman Road and Murray. We pass by the solar field daily, multiple times a day. So, you know, it's part of our everyday life, and we have a couple concerns moving ahead, I guess. You know, we're not here in non-support of the project by any means. You know, the first phase is approved, it's built and operating, which is great. There's a couple specific points I'd like to discuss this evening. The first being the screening of the original phase, which is now part of this phase, considering they're going to share the same access to Murray Road and whatnot. And we just, you know, I don't have the specifics on the top of my head what the berm was intended to be, but it's certainly insufficient. And I don't feel that it even meets what it was originally designed to. There's several trees that have been missing on the berm since early spring. And so the plantings that were intended to be there are incomplete and, you know, not well maintained, if you will. So for the long haul, we feel that a lot more could be done with the screening now that you can really understand the magnitude of the fields. When you're driving at Murray. Murray is a gateway to many of us, either going home or to Middle Grove or to the hills of Greenfield. And there's one spot where you're coming up Murray where you can see shot through the berm where the gateway is. And the berm certainly to the south side of that access point is fairly insignificant and could be improved to help shield the view of this field and the part of the field that we're going to kind of catch a glimpse of looking up there. So if there's something the applicant could do to do that, and certainly to get whoever's in charge of maintaining it and making sure all the trees, stolen or not, get put back, and really consider, you know, 3-foot evergreen trees at 40, 50 feet apart, trying to cover a 30-acre solar field is like my finger trying to cut my massive COVID-19 looking face here. So that's what I'm getting at. You know, maybe some more trees would be much appreciated. I think should be really part of the program when we're looking at this as a community for the long haul. The second point is looking down the road and the decommissioning plan that we've looked into and just seeing some of the figures on what it would take, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but in 30 years this field's going to be depleted, in probably 20 years, right?
It's a 25-year lease. It's got a 4-year life cycle of the
Okay. So in 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, somebody's got to take this field down and get rid of it. And it's likely that our applicant won't, right? I understand it'll be the town's responsibility to decommission this facility.
No.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Mr. Marco, sorry.
Well, no, go ahead.
Educate me a little bit,
Yeah,
Frank.
so it's not the town's responsibility to take it down, it's our responsibility to take it down. Decommissioning money is there in the case that for some reason it doesn't get taken down. So if you think about the value of it now, right? Nobody's going to keep an operating asset not operating because it's worth quite a bit of money. So the.
Excuse me, Frank, could you use the mic?
Sure.
You guys buy a new mic since I was here last time? No? I thought that was a good gift idea.
So the town's not obligated to take it down. The decommissioning funds are there as a safeguard if for some reason it doesn't get taken down by the applicant or the ultimate owner.
Right.
So it's not that obligation, so just clarifying.
Yeah, specifically, it's the project owner. Now,
Right.
there is a potential, and I've known a lot of these, both wind and solar, that project owners can change.
Right. And then it's very difficult for the towns and whatnot to track assignment of ownership and the obligations of the ownership and assignment to whoever owns it in 20 to 30 years. It's the deal. Technically, they'll be paying the tax.
They're making a pilot payment. So
Okay. So with that being said, though, that kind of supports the point of then why don't we make sure that the applicant puts enough money in there to take it down in the event they are not the ones doing it. Because I don't feel that like this $58,000 amount is anywhere near enough money in the event that Mr. McClanahan's firm or the 6 after his that own it could do that for $58,000. And I really, it's a significant responsibility of this board representing our taxpayers that this number is accurate. It's not an easy number to come up with. It's much harder than the Fred Flintstone 5-line item. Put a number in there chart, I feel, to really figure out a legitimate number. And I'm speaking from a contractor sense and looking at this and just spitballing some numbers around when you have to take down 13.5 acres of panels, for instance. Site demolition, I assume, includes equipment and labor to dismantle, which you're going to need heavy equipment for. Two pieces, you're going to rip out concrete with by hand and carry that to a dumpster by hand. You're going to need a material hauler, a forklift, maybe a small excavator, right? So you've got probably $4,000 to $5,000 just in equipment out of $9,150. That leaves you $4,000, which at $400 a man day or a person day, that's 1 week for 2 people to dismantle 13.5 acres of solar panels and get them into a dumpster or on a truck to take somewhere. So I'm just giving this exercise to prove that there's an oversight on the real valuation of what this is going to cost to decommission this field. And I would highly recommend that we get a third party, or the applicant or the town gets a third party, since this could become the taxpayer's responsibility. The very well could become our responsibility, our children's responsibility to pay to clean or decommission this property. We better darn sure, make sure that we've done our job now to prove that we at least used more insight, some more calculations, and some more understanding of what's involved. These look like big numbers. When you're looking, oh man, 20 grand, that's a lot. 6,000, that's a lot. I just spent $9,000 on 100 sheets of plywood today, which blew my mind. You know, the cost of doing things now is incredible. And I think as a board and as residents, we just ask that you look into the very depth and really let's reconsider this. Because there's a lot of solar fields going around. This isn't the only one. Sure. We could look back at phase one. I think we're grossly undervalued to decommission phase one as well. And if we're using this same logic from field to field to field, we could be a bankrupt town very quickly in 20 to 30 years when all these fields come down at the same time. So, and I have, you know, there's some other fields in adjacent towns going up, and their planning board's going through the same exercises. And their town engineer felt that their decommissioning plan was lacking and said, guess what? NYSERDA bases their estimated cost to decommission a solar field at $30,000+ a megawatt acre, right? So if you applied that math even to this phase two, at 3.58 megawatts at $30,000, that's $107,000. But they go further to say if you apply a 2.5% inflation rate for 20 years to that, it brings the cost per megawatt acre to $50,000. So if you apply that math, that would mean that we need at least $179,000 in decommissioning money to do that. And if you're going to take it down anyway, and you're going to put money in escrow anyway, why not put a suitable value in there instead of a grossly low value, in our opinion, to do so? And if that money isn't used and you take it down, you get it back. It's your own interest.
So just, what was that last figure you said with the 2.5%?
2.5% inflation on that 30,000 for this size field was about $50,000 megawatt. This is a 3.58 megawatt.
So 50 times the 4 acres roughly, right?
Yes.
It's $200,000.
Right. And I'm not saying this math is right, but this is NYSERDA's recommendation.
Well, that's in part what we're basing on. The decommissioning figures that were drawn here were taken from NYSERDA. This is their...
Supposedly this is a different, again, how they were interpreted. I don't know, and I don't know if the questions were asked already, you know, what is, it doesn't matter. I guess, you know, one of these shows that somehow they're going to make $250,000 taking this thing down, and the recycling, and I don't want to argue over all that because it's, you know, I could come up with numbers too that says it costs $2 million to take this down if I was a contractor doing it, right? I can make up numbers. But those recycling numbers to me don't add up, because if I take a TV back and they say, well, there's copper in this, there's a board, there's some aluminum around this thing, there's some plastic. They don't look at it like that. It's a panel that's assembled. It's not broken out into copper, aluminum, glass. They look at it as a unit that's not disassembled, not as the value of all the components in it. They can't physically take that apart and get the value of those metals out of it and then throw it away and give you money back. I don't see that happening. So I just feel that there's definitely some insight that is significant and very important when we look back at the decisions of our community and where we stand in 20 years. This is our time to do this, and our only time, or else we could be in significant financial trouble.
Right. can
And
I
I'm not, nothing against the character of Mr. McClanahan or the company who's not gonna be here to do it, but that's not what this is about, it's if he's not. I'm sorry if, you know, if anything happens, or a different shell or a legal game happens and 4 shell companies later, they're not assigned to deal with it, it's our problem.
Well,
And it's the
just
board,
to point out, it's first his problem.
if he's here,
It's second, the landowner's problem, who's been receiving, in the neighborhood of how much per year, you went?
On phase 1, 45,000, on phase 2, 30.
So $70,000 a year for 20 years. They're gonna have a lot of money. It would behoove them because it's the owner and/or landowner who's, that's the pecking order of who's responsible to decommission. And then the third was our engineer, third party, using the NYSERDA formula, which is what NYSERDA is prescribing or recommending, it's not required, saying this is the way you should calculate what your decommissioning costs are.
well, those numbers don't add up then to me, because the 58,000 isn't anywhere close to the NYSERDA numbers that we have,
Well,
right?
58,000 plus 251 gets you to $309,000.
So you're taking the owner's money.
No, I'm saying
Some, you guys following
the
the math?
recycling value,
The assumed recycling value.
assumed, but, I mean, this is what.
That's what I just said, that's breaking down a panel and dismantling a panel and saying there's a half a pound of copper in each panel, a half, you know, a quarter pound of aluminum. That's not the way they're gonna look at that. You know, so that's what I'm saying is I don't feel that these, if they're gonna be here to pick it up, there should be no issue with them having money in escrow, gaining interest on its own to do it. If
That's
it's
what the
not,
58,000 would do.
then it's, but if we get caught with the bag, which could happen, because we can't assume that Mr. Ingles is gonna be nearby or willing to put any money back into it to clean his property up, that he might not even own anymore. Mr. McClanahan probably be living on an island somewhere, which is good, or skiing somewhere. I go back with Frank a long way, okay? It's nothing personal at all. But I'm here, I have to set my personal like for the guy aside and say what's right for my town, my kids, my other tax-paying members of this town.
No, I hear you.
And I mean, why not go out and get another third party? Let's say, let's have a contractor that has no skin in this game tell us what it would take to roll up how many thousand feet of fence, how many thousand pieces of steel, and hundreds of panels, get them in dumpsters, get them out of here. You know, $6,100 to reclaim 13.5 acres. That's $469 an acre. If you've been to Agway, that will not even buy the grass seed to do an acre, let alone fill in the holes where the pedestals come out, grade it, and do what you have to do to reclaim it. There's problems with this mat, big problems. And we're gonna get stuck with it if all worst case scenarios come to fruition, which could very well happen. Because after the money's made, the power's sold, the cash is collected for those being on the person's property, quite frankly, they probably will not be ready to go on the 20th year first day to say, I'm ready to take it down. No offense. That's not the way the business works. Look at what's happening with our windmills right now, our turbines, sitting on Tug Hill, inoperable, and nobody's there to come fix the problem that they promised when those were put up nearly 20 years ago or less. And now we can't even get rid of the turbine fins. What are we going to do with them? These are green projects, but the other side of it hasn't been thoroughly evaluated. And I said I don't have a problem with the solar. None of us have a problem with the solar projects. It's the back end of it is going to hurt if we don't think about it now. And that's being proven by these wind farms, and that's a big problem. And New York taxpayers right now could be the ones holding the bag on that one. and everyone else. So let's not follow suit. We have the time, we have the insight, let's have the insight to take the time to just evaluate that. And make sure that you have a solid legal path to get the money that's needed, if it's needed, when the time comes. That's it, simple. You know, we don't owe that to anyone but everyone in this community to do that. And that's what we're here to ask. And, I never follow my notes, so I might have got off a little bit, but.
Did you have any other comments besides those?
No, please address the screening, and I don't know if that's your responsibility or Mr. Ingles, but whoever's,
We can take care of it, just because we know the neighbors,
yeah,
so we'll take care of it.
you appreciate that. I mean, it really, it could, we got some new neighbors from the city that moved out, we'll chat. Let's do it. But, and as a board, I just ask that for our community and taxpayers, let's really evaluate that, because, you know, if Frank's not here, it's gonna cost us some money to get rid of those. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Absolutely, panelists with their hands raised. Board have any comments at this time?
I have one comment. Can you just clarify the amount? Is the amount the 66,000 we talked about, or is the amount 58,000?
I believe it's 58,000.
58?
Do a discrepancy between maybe the last project and this project?
Yeah, the 66 was.
66 was
781.
Right, there's a slightly bigger project.
Sorry about that.
No,
That's, we had adjusted that figure.
Yeah.
Carol,
Yes.
can you explain how the money, or someone explain to me exactly how that amount was reached? I mean, I've looked at the chart also.
So, as explained by Joel, who unfortunately isn't here tonight to do it, if you look at the chart, what they've done, they've used the NYSERDA calculations,
Right.
and they are calculating in first a value of reclaimed recyclable materials.
Okay.
And that's where you come up with that number of the net recycling assumptions here of 251,000. And they're saying, oh, it's more, and as Mr. Meyer pointed out, it is closer, your calculation said it's gonna be closer to $200,000. So they put 58,000 in cash, which we would take and put it in an interest-bearing account for that duration of time. I think the other thing to bear in mind is these solar farms are a critical portion of the state's future electric generation. So the fact is, will they be decommissioning in 20 years?
Well,
At
you
least
said
if
the
you look at it
lifespan
currently
was
now.
40 years was the lifespan, son?
So the panel lifespan's 40 years. The lease is for 25 years on this property. They have 2 5-year options after that. So you could go 35 years. You know, I fully expect at some point they're gonna do the math and say, hey, panels have gotten this big and they'll repower the thing and put fresh panels in it. Because if I look at 5 years ago, we were building with 250 watt panels, we're now building with 450 watt panels. So, you know, by the time this thing is 25 years, you may see it with a different generation of panels on it. So, you know, and then the question becomes, do you repower it? And, you know, that's a 25-year away question. Maybe not something you want to hear as a neighbor, you know, hoping that it's going away 25 years, but that's the fact of the matter. I think the other thing to bring up, and I know, Meg, you're somewhat sensitive to me talking about this, but, you know, we're also giving public benefit fees on each one of these projects. I think this one's $75,000, one before it was $75,000, one before that was $100,000. We could just as easily put that into decommissioning if that's what you'd rather do. No one's requiring us to do that, that's just kind of, you know, something we're doing as a public benefit. So, I think comparing this to wind is not accurate, with all due respect. You know, you've got to bring in huge cranes to decommission those things. They're very big cranes, as you know. So I get that, that there is a wind problem, but I think this is a little different as something that's.
It is
11
different.
11, yeah.
It's the
11
principle that the back end wasn't reviewed with the wind. And we don't feel the back end's being reviewed now. Those aren't accurate recycling fees because you're gonna have to get rid of a panel. They take my 52-inch TV back to Best Buy right now. They charge me to take it back. You're not recycling these things. Unless you prove it to me, and your vendor will buy them back.
There are recycling facilities now, but yes, it's costing us money to do that.
I would
So,
just ask to say, we'd like to see those calculations rather than those round numbers that our town engineer, our paid town engineer did. I'd like to see how they came up with that NYSERDA number, because it's less than half of what another town's engineer came up with right here locally.
Was it a different size project?
No, it's very similar size project.
I can't
And
speak
very
for
And it's by a unit.
It's recent, within 2 weeks ago.
Do you mind sharing what town that was?
Town of Greenfield.
Environmental Design Partnerships review to the town of Greenfield, which is a public document. Charlie Baker.
It's in their meeting minutes, and they raised the question about decommissioning. Our town engineer had no comments on that, and there's questions raised.
How much was the Greenfield decommissioning?
It came up to those figures. I don't have the size of the
The
field.
5 megawatt field was going to be 186,000 prior to the
Yep.
2.5% inflation rate. So
118,000 prior, 185,438 with the inflation rate. The applicant should reevaluate the decommissioning costs and estimated bond amount. Recommended. I feel that that's what our board should be considering to do as well, is have the applicant reevaluate and have our town engineer show us these calculations. Because I estimate every day, and I'm upside down over those numbers, to be honest with you. I'm in this business of taking things apart and putting them together.
I think, Mike, you're talking about grading and things like that, it's already done. I mean, you're literally talking about pulling sea channels.
Let's
we
take
could
the
have this
assumption that in 20 years that there's zero value in recycling in 20 years. Right now it's high. Today it's high. Could you take those trucks off, those panels off the truck and take them somewhere and get 300 grand for them? As
There
junk?
will-
I
there
know.
will be-
I can't
there
speak
will
to
be
20 years
grading
from
when
now,
you
so-
pull.
You can't, exactly, thank
Right.
you. You cannot speak to 20 years, and that
But you
sets
can't
us
speak on
up
either
for...
side of it.
No,
Yeah.
so therefore you have what's called insurance. It's insurance, that's why you buy insurance, that's why you put bonds on, that's why you put money in escrow.
If you're wholeheartedly going to be responsible for this, would you sign a personal guarantee?
I don't own this system ultimately. This system, just like you guys sell off residential subdivisions or to
Right, but when we
ultimate
construct
operating
them, we have
owners.
to bond them, and we guarantee that we'll complete them.
Right, we do the same thing.
So will you personally, or the group of your owners, personally guarantee this field?
That's what the decommissioning money is for.
Yeah, but it's not enough.
It's not enough, so put enough in there and we're happy, is what we're
Yeah,
saying.
so
Put
will you
enough money in
will
there.
you
and we're
put
happy.
enough skin in the game that you are wholly responsible for?
Okay, so we're talking about, what, $100,000 in between us right now?
No, I'm going off, of-
You're a
Possibly.
200 grand. total.
possibly. I'm
Right,
using
we're
nice
talking about
service.
58 grand, that you were talking about starting
200.
with, I thought you said 30,000 a megawatt.
Right,
No, we said
whatever the math
inflation
was that I
is-
came up
it's
with, right?
50,000.
It's 50 at year 20, right?
See, you're throwing, I'm an engineer, so I
You're
like
not
to
that.
calculate the stuff and prove it, not throw spitballs at the wall and see who likes where they stick. I want math to prove that we used a good assumption so that in 20 years the board can say, we did the best we could with the information we had. And if we're wrong, you've got something to hang your hats on. If you said, I had a 5-line item chart that I could have put any number in those blanks, you guys approved them reclaiming 13 acres for $6,000, you can't even buy enough grass seed to do that.
And
Honestly.
there will be land disturbance when all the conduit's pulled up, the piles are pulled, there will be regrading. The fence is pulled, the fence posts are pulled, there will be grading.
But it's not 13.5 acres. The outline of the
You're
fence
gonna
is
have
13.5
to work
acres.
on
You're-
13.5 acres.
You're talking about probably 4 acres of actual panels. I mean, that's, you know, the only way we can make the ground coverage ratio. So you're not really talking about 13.5 acres of solar panels.
Again, that's why we asked that we do the math, because the math isn't proven here. You still got,
I mean, that's why we went through the exercise with the engineer. So,
I mean, you're all behind it, so I don't see, like, we always tell our customers that if we have to get a bond, great, because I'm gonna stand behind it. I'm not gonna lose sleep at night having a bond on the project that I wholeheartedly believe in. Okay, that's why they have them. Nobody's gonna come and take my house, my family, because I put my name on something I said I was gonna do. And we feel that the applicant or whatever company owns this thing should be very willing to put money in an escrow or a bond that appeases legitimate math, proving the math, and then we're happy. We're not saying don't do the job, we're not saying this, we're just saying, I don't feel it's enough money to clean this up later.
I guess I'm just trying to get to the, what would that dollar amount be? I mean, you're asking us to question our engineer's calculations.
Yeah, so
You're
in
asking us
this,
to
in
question
this
the-
decommissioning plan, who did the math here? Was that your math, Frank?
so we have a spreadsheet we use that's more complicated than that, and that's a summary. So, so that's, and then that gets sent out with the decommissioning plan. And then, you know, MJ reviewed it. So, I mean, keep in mind, this is number 4 here. It's in line with Clifton Park, it's in line with other systems that we've done. So it's really, you can come to a point where it becomes a per megawatt, and that's what I was trying to say, a per megawatt figure. Because it's the same racking, it's the same plan every time, just scaled up and down.
So you're at $58,000 for, so you're half, I mean, you're $16,000 a megawatt, right?
Right.
Where another-
NYSERD is saying over 30 plus 2.5% per year for 20 years.
So it's the value of the money in 20
Right.
years.
So are you looking for us to put up year 20's value right now, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yes,
no other,
because that's what the town's gonna have
no other
to do.
town does that.
We'll put a plan in place to build to that. 58 grand is not 180 grand in 20 years. It's not gonna
It's
be.
your money, it'll be your money to decommission it when you need it. You're just gonna take it back from the town, so what's the difference? You're building your.
I'm just
the
thinking, should I
fact-
just take
The
the
fact that
public
you're a
benefit
little
money and throw it
reluctant
into
to
it
wanna
we're
build
done.
this nest egg to decommission your own field makes me a little nervous, because you're gonna need to spend that money anyways. And if you don't, you're gonna get it back. So, what's the point? I mean, either put a personal guarantee up, if you don't wanna put the money in escrow, and live by it, like you should, because it's your responsibility, or put the money in escrow, make sure it's hopefully greater than enough, and if it is, then you get to take the balance back and use it for your retirement. And that way, we, as this board and the taxpayers, aren't responsible for your mess, because you're gonna be in your 70s by then. You're gonna probably sell the LLC to somebody else somewhere along the way who may not be the one that's sitting in this room guaranteeing us this.
I'll
Good
say,
deal.
we exit these things in year one, so we won't be the operator of this. It's not our, that's not our
Again,
business.
my point,
But they're the ones
you
putting.
just put yourself 6 feet in the ground with that comment.
I'm
You got
being-
1
I'm being
year of
completely transparent with
responsibility.
you, John.
Hmm?
I'm being completely transparent with you, John.
Right.
You know, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. I'm not, you know, I won't be here. What I'm saying is, we've done this math in many
It's
towns.
not, so let's,
So you guys say it's not enough, the
So what-
engineer and we say it is enough.
I know you've already started the work, so you're trying to push to get this through. So why don't we just take the time and get good calculations to prove a value? And that's really
You must be wrong 4 times other places, and we have other, and you probably handed these calculations to the engineer, our town engineer, and they looked at it.
He runs them through the same, nice sort of
I
formulas.
mean, think of how many towns Emily represents. And how many, I mean,
Listen, a
Clifton
lot
Park's
of things have
got,
been done wrong. Guess the
Clifton Park-
engineers that came
yeah.
up with asbestos, I bet they're just cheering right now. You know, let's not assume
yeah,
that you've been right, and how many times have you been questioned on the decommissioning fees?
Now, just to clarify though, earlier, your calculations, you were saying that your thought was, based on what you knew of NYSERDA, that decommissioning this project would be in the neighborhood of $200,000.
Just under
50,000
200,000. With the interest, 2.5% interest,
Yeah,
20,
includes that was the
inflation interest.
That was the
20 years.
2.5% calculation.
And that's what we should, the number we should be looking at, not today's cost, because that's insignificant to this town. We don't have to think about this. Once you folks make a decision for us, we're done for 20 years till this cleanup comes. And then we're gonna be going,
Well, my gut is this thing's gonna be around for a lot more than 20 years.
that's great.
The state stays on the path they're on.
Let's hope, but we can't assume that. And that was, I'm not referencing solar power to wind, it was the principles. Everybody thought that was gonna be great too, and that these things are gonna work, and when they don't, what happens? What do we do with it? Who gets stuck with it? Everybody's looking at these eyesores sitting still there now. And nobody knows what to do with them or who's gonna pay for it. Everybody's going like this, nobody. Sure.
Hi, I would just like to say, hello, my name is Kim Waters,
You wanna
and
go up to?
Yeah, can you please come up and announce your name?
it's just going to be a quick comment, but thanks, Frank. My name is Kim Waters, and I live at 475 Sodeman Road, which is adjacent to the property. And as clearly as I saw the trucks working today, my thought is I would like to just as clearly see the numbers from all parties so that I can be clear on the decommissioning. So I know the work is happening and it's started,
and it shouldn't be.
and it shouldn't be. But what I'd really like to see, because again, we're not here to take the project away, we're here to just make sure that it's done for my children and our landowners and my sister that lives right next to us. I just want the clarity to be there with the numbers as clear as the work is that's being done, as they work there physically. Only comment. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have one question, Frank. How can you be working without this being approved and not have a approved SWIP with an NOI in the state?
the only work we have going on there is we are working on the swale on phase 1, because we're still closing out the SWIP. So
So the clearing on the
the
site.
clearing was done by the property owner. We didn't even have a lease on the property, no contractual obligation whatsoever. So,
He definitely was disturbed over, well over an acre. And
Mr. Chair, the second portion of this project does have an active SWIP on it too from Craig Manning. They are doing inspections on it. So just to give you guys,
when was the second phase approved to get an NOI?
they lumped the two in together to do inspections for stormwater. The site, once Mr. Engels cleared the site.
But you're not constructing anything on
We're
phase
not,
two?
we have no,
construction on site.
on phase two, we have none of our own equipment on site, no rented equipment controlled by us, nothing that has to do with our company on that phase two. Phase one, we were there today, clearing out putting in check dams on by the side of the road and trying to close out phase one SWIP. And we've been in there restoring and trying to get grass to grow and silt, which is a good time.
So, board thoughts at this point?
I mean, given what Mr. Munter and they're saying, I mean, are we able to kind of wait and have our engineer look at maybe those figures he's referring to from the town of Greenfield? Or is that not something we can do? Or are we even able to require the applicant to put more money aside for the future? I don't know what our legal, abilities are, or, so I don't know if we're able to do either of those things.
Any other comments from the board?
Well, I would say that they've put forth some ideas to look at. Our town engineer has looked at it a couple of times and recommends the path he's put forth in his engineering evaluation. And that's what we pay him to give us. So that is the group we've hired to go do that. And that's the expert recommendation we've gotten thus far. So I would say we're following our processes and our guidance. So if we believe in that process, then that would be the process that we would follow. We could always ask them again. We could make it a condition to have them relook at it. Because that's
Maybe make it a condition of approval to come back at some point?
have him look at it again and verify his
Have him
numbers.
be,
Our town engineer. And have him compare the two and evaluate which one he wants.
I mean, if you were here tonight and you could speak to it, obviously then we'd have more clarification, but are we able to kind
He
of
called.
pause and wait?
Well, we could pause and wait, but he's given us our stuff in writing. So we can ask him to reevaluate it with the new information that he provided to us and see if he looks at the information from, Greenfield, Clifton Park, and the information he has, and say which way he wants to go in his professional opinion.
I just thought it might make those, residents more comfortable if they were to hear more from him.
anybody else have any thoughts? I want to look something up here in terms of time frames.
I have to say, I agree with John, he's our expert, but I don't have a problem with him reviewing it and reviewing from other towns also.
We don't know if he's seen this other information either.
That's true, we don't know what information he's working in, with him not being able to be here, that makes a difference. But also you said you were willing at least to 75,000 that you were gonna do the other
I
place.
mean, the town's either gonna get public benefit money, or we can take it and stick it into the decommissioning.
I mean,
Yeah.
so, one way or the other.
We're spending that money either way, so if that,
So
makes
that
people
might,
happy,
that might
sure.
be an alternative. I mean, I'm not the engineer, and, I play with numbers all day long, doing bookkeeping, but I don't do engineering. Again,
Time frame, we have to.
right, for the time frame. So, yeah, I would be okay with making that a condition of it, if that our engineer would look at it. That would be.
do is make the condition the satisfaction of the town attorney and the planning board, or the planning board engineer, or the town engineer, after review of the information from Greenfield and his data that he has. Because we don't know if he's seen the information. Sometimes seeing information changes people's minds, but we don't have that. If we had that little piece of data to some of the other members, we would be able to know.
So, if we were to close the public hearing tonight, we have 62 days to make a decision. So I would not necessarily want to do this condition, not having the engineer here this evening or our council to say what would happen, because the decision to move from a public benefit fund to a decommissioning fee is something that was discussed separately with the town itself. So, go ahead, Frank.
Close the public hearing. We're not in a rush to go to this particular site.
And we'll do some due diligence with our engineer and our council.
This is like, the second one we did, we were trying to make a tax equity deadline. You guys were very accommodated. This one, there's some incentive issues with NYSERDA. We're probably not going to build this for months.
Mr. Mandel, we can hear you, yes, but we're still on another part of the meeting. Okay, so, my recommendation would be that we close the hearing now. We'll get back with our engineer attorney and we'll continue on the items next month.
Let me just make one more comment though. When we're looking at phase 2, it raises the question again of what
We can't go back and redo phase 1.
Well, it's part of the same.
What we're doing is we're deviating from a precedent.
So take that into consideration. If the math comes back, and we know we already own 30 acres of panels we don't have enough money to clean up. When the second company after Frank's takes over. And legally, I would recommend that something be put in so that as these fields get sold and assigned to new owners, that the town attorney has the right to review those, to make sure that they're held responsible to the same accounts that Mr. McClanahan is to this board. Because hop to hop to hop, responsibility fades away. And that's legally the game. It can happen. I'm not saying it will, but that we have to protect ourselves against as a town when we're all out there paying potentially to do these things. Hopefully they'll be around forever and cut the power lines down on all you solar. Great. But we have to think about the chance that we don't, okay? We have to think of the what if we're holding the tools to take it apart.
Yeah, so I think that path, which we could do that with 62 days.
Yeah, we have time.
And if we can easily get the town engineer's answer in that period of time.
Everybody good with that? Then, is there anybody else that has comment they want to bring to this project at this point? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Mr. Marcano? Oh, are you guys all set? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
Okay.
And,
Mr. Marcano?
yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barton?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Moving along, we have the continuation of the Oscar Solar site plan review and special use permits. This project's been before us for a couple of months now, and it came before us back in 2019. New documents that we have before us right now include a grading plan dated May 3rd, 2021, a stormwater pollution prevention plan dated May 3rd, 2021, an E and SC details dated May 23rd, 2021, U.S. Fish and Wildlife verification correspondence dated May 21st, 2021, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife correspondence regarding New York State Endangered Species Act dated May 21st, 2021. And just recently, and I apologize for any confusing delay, there was the SharePoint document that didn't get shared completely, but we received that on May 14th, the visual impact assessment. So, Mr. Lewis, do you have anything more to add at this point?
Other than the gentleman that lives adjacent to it, that Mr. Mandel has
Yeah,
called the
well,
office.
Mr. Mandel's got his hand up, we want to have comment when we get to the hearing. Do you, as a project sponsor, have anything you want to add at this point?
I think you received the information from our project manager on the few items that Dr. Mandel brought up last time?
Yes,
Okay, so,
yes, we did get that.
okay, so those are the items that we'd like to point out or discuss with
Okay.
Dr. Mandel.
Okay. So if you got nothing other than that to add at this point, I'll open the hearing at 8:05 p.m. Anybody, Dr. Mandel, you're here, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, can everybody hear him? If you speak up as much as you can, we're having some technology difficulties here.
I received simulation photographs from the photographer employed at the company that is going to construction project. And photographs that I guess are available to the committee show.
Mr. Mandel, excuse me a second, can you speak up a little more? We're not getting you, able to hear you completely here. It's difficult. Go ahead, try it again. We can hear you, but the public can't hear you.
Got my volume turned
There it
all the way
is.
up.
There it goes. All right, go ahead.
I was instructed by Mr. Lewis to look at the Murray Road solar farm and how the electric was connected to the electric grid there. And I was told that the project destined for what's across the street from my house would look quite similar, according to Mr. Lewis. According to the simulated photographs that were sent to me by the photographer for, I guess it's CSOCS or whatever the company is called, shows a much larger scarring of the land that the photographer described to me at the time. It's incredibly defaced, obvious, crude, to me unacceptable. I understand that the electric is to be connected to Route 29 because National Grid service there can accommodate the solar farm, as opposed to connecting it by the people who are going to benefit from this, the Ostros, because there the National Grid does not have the capacity. But I believe when a new project is developed, National Grid or any electric company may have to come in and increase the capacity of their service at some cost to someone. I don't understand why this project doesn't have to absorb that cost so that the Ostros, on whose dump this project is being built, are made to suffer some of the negative impact of this project. It would seem that the only person that is going to be detrimentally affected by this is me. And I object to that on those grounds. I am totally in favor of solar farms I believe that there is global warming. I think there's need for alternate energy. And I have no objection to a solar farm across the street from my house, which was incidentally presented to me as all residential. And being the fool that I am, I trusted my real estate agents. I subsequently obviously found out what's across the street, and I just don't think that I should be doubly penalized for it. I was also told in an email by Mr. Davis that the photographs sent to me were an exaggeration of what I could expect. I'm 80, and I have never experienced a developer presenting a project to the public or to those people that may object and showing it to be more objectionable rather than less objectionable. I guess this is the first time in experience. I think that's all I have to say.
So to respond on the cost portion, should I respond to that? So Renasola, as the developer, we are responsible for the upgrade costs for the interconnection and the power lines and the power poles. Beginning the project. Subsequently, and ultimately, the final owner of the project will take on those costs. So those won't be pushed forward to anybody such as the Ostros or Dr. Mandel in that respect. Those costs will come directly to the ultimate owner of the project.
Any other comments?
This is Brad Davis from Renasola. Can you hear me?
Yep, you can.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure what my colleague Adam just said. I couldn't hear a word that he said. Would you mind repeating, Mr. Bartow? I can hear you quite clearly, but really no one else in the room. Just so I can make sure that I understand the comments.
He was commenting that with respect to the National Grid interconnection, that you would be responsible for installing it, maintaining it, and whatnot, that the subsequent owner or operator of the system would ultimately bear that burden over time. And I think that related to some of the comments about the width of the clearing and how much clearing would be there and how it could maintain.
Right.
That was in that exchange between you, Mr. Davis, and Mr. Mandel.
Exactly.
That's what he was explaining.
Okay, that's correct. And maybe I can just add to that, Mr. Bartow, and this is more directed to Dr. Mandel. As I mentioned in my email the other day, Dr. Mandel, the setback of the right-of-way on either side of the utility pole is 15 feet, so basically 30 feet across. So in some of the photos and visual simulations, we obviously do the best we can with the software, and I mentioned that it is a little bit over-exaggerated, perhaps for effect, so it's clear what's going there, as opposed to us trying to hide it, as was inferred. So I think what we're demonstrating here, what we're showing in visual simulations is worst-case scenario, as opposed to best-case scenario, whereby it looks like there's a significant amount of clearing there, but I sincerely believe that it will not be that bad, and it will not be that open-ended. Thank you.
So one comment that I had is there a way that in some of your visual simulations you could show more of what we're seeing with the panels? And are we looking at the front side of the panel or the back sides of the panels in the various photo angle shots that can be taken? Looking on my computer, it's unclear as to what I'm looking at with the panels on.
Can you tell me which photo you're looking at, Mr. Bartow?
Okay,
And then I can comment on that?
I'm looking at, right now it's 7B. And 9B is another one. Oh, that's the perimeter fence. Oh, no, it's got the
That's
pipes.
the panels in the background that you see.
Yeah, but you can't tell if you're seeing
That's the face
the
of,
facing of the panel or the back.
that's the south, that would be the southwest face of the panel.
Now, these are photos that were previously submitted, and these aren't the photos directly across from Dr. Mandel's property, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to open that. And if you wouldn't mind, or maybe it's Ms. Blanchard would add CNS as a panel.
Are they on there? Are they?
Oh, yes, Brian Bayer.
Okay.
He's, as an attendee, if you could add him. His firm is the one responsible for these photos, and he may be able to provide better context than I will.
I just promoted him, he should come up soon.
Great, thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian Bear, CNS. Brad, yes, thanks for, I had your hand up. I wasn't sure anybody could see me there. I just had a couple of thoughts. And first, the panels are generally, going to be facing south, right? So the views from the state highway would basically be showing the front of the panels, right? I just wanted to bring up a couple of points. The clearing photograph, that simulation, we really need to understand that simulation will look like that from one vantage point, and that's the vantage point taken directly south of the interconnection point. As soon as you move east or west along that road, you will not see nearly as much of that clearing because your angle will be skewed and you'll see more vegetation. So the only place that, you'll see that clearing in as much detail as what's shown is in that one direction. So that's what Brad means as well by that being the worst case scenario. So if you move up the road 50 feet, you will not see that much clearing at all. I think that's worth noting. And then in addition, I think it's also worth noting that whereas there will be some holes visible from Dr. Mandel's property, he won't see anything from his house or his structure or his lawn. All of that is protected by existing trees. And so the only time he'll really be able to see anything is if he's out towards the state highway or perhaps leaving his driveway. And so that's one thing that I also just want to make sure that we all understand, that's the visual impact related to his property. Because as you get into the woods a little bit, again, you wouldn't be able to see, the development.
Are you saying from his house and lawn, he won't be able to see?
He can't see anything.
Right away, or he can't see any part of the project?
No part of the project at all.
Any other? So you received,
I don't know if it's possible to disagree with anybody here.
I'm sorry, David, what did you say? Dr. Mandel?
I don't know if it's possible to disagree with anybody here when you say there's no possibility of seeing any part of this project from my home. If I had been a little bit more intelligent when I bought this place, I would have noticed the white methane vent pipes on the dump at that time. But I was commuting from New York City where I work and had very little time to stare around. The first time I tried to sell this house, the first day a real estate agent came here in very inclement weather. He said, and I'll paraphrase, I hope I'm wrong, but I think that I saw methane pipes on the property across the street from your house. He came back the next day and confirmed it, and anyone can see it. So the notion that you can't see the dump from my house is something that I just don't agree with. And again, I don't understand why no consideration is given to running the electric in a way that impacts the Orstro property, the Orstro homestead. Why, other than saving money, it has to impact my property and the value of my property?
This is Brian Davis again. Dr. Mandela, and I did address that point to you directly in email as well in a letter to the planning board that I circulated to Mr. Bartow and Mr. Bianchi a number of weeks ago. It's not up to the solar project developer to decide where the utility lines go. We simply connect where they exist. And in this case, the three-phase utility lines with capacity existed on Route 29, which is why we went to that point of connection. The lines along, the name of the street escapes me, but where the Ostros live, that side street there is only single-phase capacity and would not be possible to connect at that location. It's National Grid's utility infrastructure, and this is how it was designed and built. And it's very typical throughout the state of New York that it make higher voltage lines along major roads, such as 29 and not the side road. So that's, I know you don't like that answer, but unfortunately that is the correct answer.
One of the reasons that I seem so exercised about this is I followed the directions of the building inspector, Mr. William, I can't think of his last name now, Lewis, who told me to go to the project on Murray Road. And if you look at the way the electrical connection is made there, I don't think you've gone a little across the street from that. It's just beyond ugly, I think, to anyone.
Any other comments from the public here? Anybody from the board have anything before I have to do more comments?
Yes.
Chairman, could
Go
I
ahead,
please make a couple comments?
Who wants to make a comment? You, Pat?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I find it hard to believe when the man that's titled doctor is that naive to buy property that doesn't realize it's on a state highway nestled between an encapsulated landfill and a nuclear training facility. So I'm not trying to be overly callous. However, I realize he was duped by the realty people. I realize that. Having said that, to belabor this any longer, I think that everything regulatory speaking is within bounds.
Okay. Bernadette, you had a comment?
So just for clarification, I think what might be confusing, that photo, that simulation is a direct look onto those poles, correct? Mr. Mandel, Dr. Mandel's property is not at that direct angle where his house is that what you guys are telling us? Is that clear? I guess, could you, maybe that's not clear to Dr. Mandel, so that's not directly in front of it. So the angle perhaps is going to hide that.
That's right. So basically, if you head out to the end of Dr. Mandel's driveway, you will see, the utility poles at the end of the driveway itself. But from, when you're basically pulling on to Route 29, or is that Route 29? Route 29. When you're pulling onto the road there, you can see the poles at the end of the driveway. If you're looking at it from his house or his porch, they're not visible.
And I don't know exactly what the regulations are, but is there allowed to be some growth once you clear, it looks like it's very cleared out, obviously, like some, greens, I don't know how much is allowed, but I mean, will that soften over time with, plants just naturally?
I would have to defer to CMS on that one. Maybe Brian can comment on that piece, but.
Brian, did you hear that question?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And so just like any other utility corridor, they will have frequent maintenance in there, but you can definitely rest assured that, you know, some shrubbery, some low-growing things of that nature, things that aren't going to be impacted to the line itself or danger trees would certainly be located in that area, right? So we wouldn't expect it to be completely barren for the, you know, the life of, you know, the facility. We would expect it to green up a little bit for sure.
Any other comments from the board before I give it through that? I have Meg, you got something?
Just one thing, do we want to look at their decommissioning plan too?
Yes, we gave some comments, I think, at the last meeting on it, and you've heard some of the discussion tonight. Certainly, we're going to talk to our engineer and attorney a little bit more about that. But I don't have any other direction on what you've heard at this point. Other than we did mention in this commissioning plan that was submitted to us, I haven't seen a change yet, that we would propose a bond, and typically we would do it in cash. So, I don't want to respond to that. But there were a couple of things that I know that have come up in the letter dated June 16th from MJ Engineering in terms of items that we typically like to see in our full site plan review on this that still aren't included. He's outlined a number of them, including the site layout plan, the landscaping plan, the site-related construction details. We would need all of those complete the packet that we're doing at. That's typically what we have and what we business, so we'll be looking for those. And then in terms of the payment in lieu of taxes, have we begun negotiations of that with the town attorney at this point? How's the status of that?
Yeah, I've been in discussions with Jim Craig on that. We've been going back and forth. The last email I had from him was last week, but yes, we've begun those discussions. You know, not only with Jim, but also with the county and with the school district as well. So yes, those are
Because typically he likes to see that, at least for the town's part of it, it's been negotiated out. And I'm sure the Henry's going to be the same. But for the pilot, Jim is involved.
Right. So in addition to the pilot, we're also talking to Jim about a host community benefit agreement as well. So those two items are.
So I think it's those added plan items that we.
Yeah, and those elements are coming. Well, in the letter here that it was proposed that some sort of conditional consideration for that after we and then we would get the updated plans from the DEC or the updated thoughts from the DEC on the site plans.
Yeah, and we won't do a conditional approval. We want to see those. So with that, since the hearing's still ongoing, I don't want to be in a clock that we're going to strip ourselves out. So I'm going to recommend that we adjourn the hearing and reconvene it next month if you're ready, or whenever you're ready with those detailed plans. And have the good package for us. Board fine with that at this point?
Can you make the submission date?
The date
2 weeks before.
July 7th.
I'd have to.
It's only a couple weeks from
I'd have to get back to
Just
you.
let us know.
Yeah.
We won't schedule it at this point. We don't have to notice it. We're already on notice, so our minutes will reflect that
It's adjourned.
it's adjourned tonight until the next time that you come to us.
The next meeting.
But we'll have
Even
it,
if they don't present.
we'll have it at the next meeting. And if you don't present, we'll just adjourn it again.
That's right.
Okay. So I would then suggest that we schedule that, July 21st is our next meeting?
Yes.
7:05 p.m. Actually, let me make that 7:10, because we may have a small project that I want to hold up. It's really long to do. So we'll do it for 7:10. Okay. Next project, minor subdivision for Irwin, 329 Atomic Road. This is a new minor subdivision from Linda and Thomas Irwin. The project is in West Milton. It's in the Hamlet 2 zoning district. Everyone should have before them, one, the minor subdivision application dated May 27th, agricultural data statement dated May 27th, short environmental assessment form part 1 dated May 27th, 2021, a map showing easements location across National Grid fee right-of-way, deeds regarding 2 30-foot easements on the Niagara Mohawk right-of-way dated August 7th, 1959, the land use application form for National Grid dated June 4th, 2021, freshwater wetlands validation letter from DEC dated May 13th, 2021, and a map of the proposed subdivision. I'm going to deal with the state environmental review stuff up front first. So regarding the state environmental quality review, I will entertain a motion to declare the Milton Planning Board as lead agency on the Irwin minor subdivision application.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second, Chairman.
Any discussion? Tina, pull the board.
Mr. Marcano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Bendenza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Next, I'll entertain a motion to declare the Irwin minor subdivision an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Is that the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Any discussion? If not, pull the board.
Mr. Marcano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Bendenza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. So now I'm going to go through the 11 questions on the impact assessment here. Okay. In terms of part 2 of the state environmental assessment form impact assessment, question 1, will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? My answer to that is no. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of the use of land? A recommendation on that is no. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? Recommendation on that is no. Will the proposed action have an impact on environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? There's no critical environmental area here, so the answer is no. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? We've indicated that the answer to that would be no or small impact. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies or public-private wastewater treatment utilities? In both cases, the answer to those is no. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? The answer to that question is no. Question 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, including wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? The answer to that is no. Will the proposed action result in an increase in potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? The answer is no. And then 11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? The close answer to that is no. Anybody have any comments on response to any of those questions? There being no, I would entertain a motion to approve parts 2 and 3 of the environmental assessment form, and based on the minor subdivision application submitted and the environmental assessment provided and reviewed, that the proposed approval of a minor subdivision will not result in any significant environmental impact.
Mr. Chairman, that's a move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr.
Can you
Marcano?
poll the board, please?
Mr. Marcano?
Yes.
Ms. Padula?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Ms. Bendenza?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Whittle?
Yes.
Chairman Barto?
Yes. Good, give you this, Tina. Okay, the Irwins, if you would like to present to us your proposal?
Okay, our proposal is we have 33 acres that houses a trailer park. we'd like to separate that and divide it into two and make it two separate SBL numbers. In the past, we've had investors come out and possibly would like to purchase the park itself, but they don't want the 33 acres. They just want the 9 acres that the trailer park is on, because that's what's making their money, not the vacant land. So what we're proposing to do is just, as the survey shows, just pretty much cut the two parcels. The trailer park will be on approximately 9 acres, and the balance will be the second SBL number that we're requesting.
So your intentions with the portions that you want to keep, that you're referring to as Lot 2,
Yes.
At this point are not to consider any development
No.
at this time?
No.
But you are suggesting that an easement be moved, I think,
Yes,
from
yes.
one of the two easements on the mobile home park to this parcel.
Yes, exactly.
So with respect to that specifically, I guess my question would be, how were these easements, you sent us a copy of this deed.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we don't have the full deed, so it would be useful if you could get us the rest of the deed so we can see, like it makes reference to parties of the first part, parties of the second. And we don't have any of that to know what it is, and we don't have, well, were these done as easements in perpetuity, or are these temporary easements that are granted by, at that time, back in 1957, Niagara Mohawk?
I talked to Niagara Mohawk Real Estate. I talked to two different, we did a video conference on June 4th, and they looked up their survey. They looked up, the picture of the survey, and 1957, it's a reserve right to have, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I'm so
Okay.
nervous.
Don't be nervous.
So we have the right to cross at 2 points. Now, my father had the trailer park and the land previous to us, and he never memorialized the crossings. So technically, when I spoke to her, or spoke to him and her, and she said the easiest way out would be to get rid of a second crossing in your trailer park and move that crossing onto the new lot that you want to develop. And she explained, she goes, if this was me, this is exactly how I would do it. And I did print,
I saw that one drawing.
yeah, I did a quick little drawing, basically.
Yep.
And because they're not memorialized, we can still move them around to where we need them. But I need to memorialize these with her once our new surveyor comes back, when the surveyor comes back out. But basically, you have a west road, which is next to Capel, and that would come all the way around. And the west road would come all the way around and finish here, and there's a natural hammerhead right there for emergency vehicles. So that would be good. What we're looking to do is the east road, which is the vacant, next to the vacant land, we're gonna come all the way all the way down to the power lines and stop before the power lines. That way we're not accessing over their property. At that point, we will put a hammerhead in there to allow for fire trucks, emergency vehicles, etc. So that's what we are looking to do. And they'll also need to have a diagram. The surveyor will have to put in the proposed road going across the second easement, or the second point.
So, with respect to just movement of the easement, typically when we create what is known as a flag lot, what happens to this lot 2? What happened to the property whenever that power line went in? Is lots were created to the east of the power line and to the west of the power line. So that fee easement acts as dividing as a subdivision.
Yes.
So you had this lot to the west and lot to the east. Now you're proposing to create, what I'll say, lot 1 is actually going to be 2 lots.
Yes.
East of the power line, west of the power line. Lot 2 is going to be east of the power line, west of the power line. Getting an easement, we're gonna wanna see an easement that gets access, because we theoretically can't approve anything that will allow development on a landlocked parcel. In effect, that lot 2 west is landlocked.
Right.
So if you get an easement, and our zoning code would require us to have a 50-foot easement. So if all National Grid will authorize is a 30-foot easement, you would have to go to the zoning code of appeals to get an area variance to allow that. The thing that we and they will likely be worried about is what's going to happen with that 18.2 acres on lot 2 to the west of the college. So number one, we'll want to see that easement placed somewhere on lot 2's area portion of it. And then you're going to have to show us how it's going to connect out to the common project road. Right now, you've got it kind of in the middle of the parcel.
Right, exactly, and
And
basically.
I don't know if you want to have it along one side or the other side, just so you're not, because that's going to be, you're going to have to plot a road and guarantee access all the way through and into lot 2. And depending on how much you develop in the west side of lot 2, or somebody in the future develops, it could, that, you're going to have to continue that through lot 2 to the point that whatever number of parcels. Now, you're in a Hamlet 2 zoning district. Basically, the zoning permits one unit per acre. 18.3 acres, you take away the wetlands, let's say you end up with 12 acres, you could have potentially 12 lots back there. 30-foot easement isn't going to accommodate 12 lots. So we need to think about what that's going to be. Similarly, on the front part of, or the east side of lot 2, we've got 4.42 acres. You can easily have 4 lots there. So I don't know what's your long-term sense of how you want to see this property developed, but we'll want to understand that as we look to say, okay, is a 30-foot easement adequate? Where's it going to be placed? How does it meet the other development potential needs that are out there?
The only thing that we've thought about doing in the back, possibly building a retirement home for ourselves. It sits between a sawmill and the atomic power plant. So it's not a real good place to put a lot of homes. But there are a couple of spots back there that are quiet, you know, because it's long and it's thin. So there's not a lot of things you can do. The reason I propose to put the road down the middle is because one of the reasons is where the hammerhead is, we would have to pull the road away from the existing road far enough to get by the new proposed hammerhead, which we would lose space there, we would lose acres along that line, just for that. And the other reason is, if the road is in the middle of a treed field, there's quite a bit of trees and brush in this field, it really isn't noticeable. But if it's up against another road, people like to come and they like to cruise through here because it's a big horseshoe. They just have nothing else to do, so they like to cruise through. And it's become a problem over the years. Some people come through quite a good speed, and they get around the other side before anybody can grab something and throw it at them. So it's become a real issue. In the past, in the center of the rear horseshoe, I have placed boulders to impede this. Somebody comes ripping in one side, they have to turn around and go back through what, the gauntlet that was just created, and they don't do it anymore. So it's actually quite a good thing to be moving the access road, because it creates a natural barrier that they can't get around. But if I put this road up next to that one, and they could see it, and they could get to it, they would. So I would have to not only put the road there, but then I'd have to put another barrier between the two roads so they couldn't get to it. So in my mind, the easiest thing to do, since we don't plan on putting houses here, we don't plan on doing any of that, just put a road up the center where nobody can see it, and it's our access to the rest of our property, and it just solves, quite a few problems. And
So your intention is to potentially only have one residential home on the western part of it?
That's the only thing that we consider doing. We don't have any plans to put houses back there. Like I said, there's a sawmill back there. We near Sawmill Run, fairly loud, you know, and the atomic sites on the other side. This property has been in her family since 1968.
58.
58?
58.
Oh, okay. He started the farm in 60.
He did, yeah, I'm sorry, it must have been 68, yes, he started Parkinson's.
But, I mean, we're getting older. Sure. We've lived in Boston. I've lived there my whole life, so. They don't make any more land. And since everybody that's interested in buying the park has no interest in the rest of it, and the price doesn't change because of that, I don't see any reason to let it go.
So would you be in support of a condition of approval that said only one residential unit?
Yeah.
On lots 2 East or West?
Well, actually, it's one.
According to your map, it's east and west. Oh, sorry, I was reading this one down here. Sorry, north and south.
Okay, I didn't want to say that earlier.
I mean, my son has recently got married, and they were looking for a house, and we told him that he could possibly at one point maybe buy a piece of property out front on the lot. We don't know if that's gonna happen, but
Okay.
nothing back behind.
So that's where I'm saying, where you may want to consider how you place that driveway, how you limit that.
It's just the best place it needs to be. If you saw the layout in person, you'd understand it more, and when you're,
Can you just show us where that's going to go and connect?
it's right straight up the middle of the field.
This is basically my little chicken scratch of how the surveyor can't get out till next Wednesday or Thursday. And this is basically what we're gonna say to her, this is what we are gonna wanna do, because this is what Nagamog told us to do up here.
And you might want to talk to Bill just to make sure that that driveway that will separate lot 2 to the north still can accommodate at least one buildable area. Because if you do decide, oh, we'll sell this part of this to my son, that's certainly something you could do. You might have to do another subdivision.
Well, I mean, this
Sell
is
them the whole lot.
Well, this is the whole, this 4-point-something acres, one lot.
Yes.
So, I mean, if we were gonna do that, we'd just sell them the whole thing and say, we just need access to
You
this
could
road.
get an easement.
You know, we have no plans about, you know, building a house or anything.
No, I think you just want to make sure that when you go to plot, how far away from the side lots and front lot, where that house and its septic system.
Right.
Conceivably might. And make sure that your driveway doesn't, your easement doesn't get in the way of it.
Right. Well, it just makes the most sense to me to put it where it is, because of what I, explained to you about putting it 2 foot apart, and people seeing it, want to use it, and thinking they can drive through it. We've dealt with a lot of things over the years that people like to do.
So then I had some questions just with respect to the trailer park. You've got some encroachments on the.
Yes.
On the
Yep.
yes. Feet, right away, the shed, there's one trailer, it looks like to be a second trailer that might be encroaching.
Yes, when I spoke with National Grid, the shed's gonna go. The gentleman who put the shed there had told us that he actually had paperwork from National Grid, but he had passed away, now his son has the home, and I told him, if you have any paperwork, please get it to me and let me know. But otherwise, the shed's gonna go. When I spoke to National Grid, they said the trailer in the corner, that half of it's on their land. She said, please ask for a variance to let the trailer be there till the extent of its life. And once the trailer leaves, you're done. And I said, that's.
Or they'd have to put it in compliance.
Right,
That trailer's
so,
been there since 1972.
yeah, so it was brand new when it's going
Well,
nowhere.
This is something that happened a long time.
So she said, ask for a variance from National Grid for that. And she said, there's another trailer right by the shed
Yep.
where you can just see the corner. She goes, we're not even worried about that. Because I wouldn't even be worried about that. So,
If you could just say that National did something from them in writing that says National.
Yes,
Grid's
yes,
on it.
that's- yeah.
The condition of variance has been granted for the
Yes.
one, and we have no other concerns about any other encroachment once the shed's
Yes.
and that's that application, I believe, that you have.
And you have that land use.
Yeah.
Now, we actually have paperwork from 1957 when this was originally done. And all the paperwork we have said their right away was 50. And now they're saying it's 100. And the gentleman that passed away that put the shed there that he has paperwork when they were actually surveying this about 8 or 10 years ago. Talked to the gentleman surveying it, can I do this? Yes, you can, and he gave me paper. We don't care about that right now, as long as we can get past this.
No, I hear
And
you.
just at one point, it appears that they somehow doubled their right of way, which we really don't care, as long as this all works for everybody, it's not an issue.
Okay, definitely right, there should be some.
But it's not a can that we want to open.
No,
It's just that we have some support paperwork that says everything we
No, we've
have.
seen projects on the same way.
So, I mean, that is one possibility of why these things are where they are,
Yep.
is because they didn't own that then.
Yep, it's
So,
possible. So, we need to find out if the easement's gonna be 30 feet.
Correct.
This
The
VA.
easement from National Grid comes in at 30 feet, Mr. Chairman. The applicant will have to go before the zoning board for relief of from 50 feet to 30 feet for an area variance. That I've already discussed with Mrs. Irwin and told her she's working with the right-of-way manager for National Grid to try to get it, hopefully to say 50 feet. If that comes into play, then the zoning board is null and void, that would need to go for it. But I discussed that with Mrs. Irwin. Don't know what the outcome of that will be until National Grid comes back with their findings.
So what's National Grid giving you a timeframe when they get back to you?
I have to submit the new survey that Dara's doing next week. I have to submit that with a $500 fee. And I can submit that electronically, and then I need to send it through the mail. She goes, it could take a while. It could be quick, it could take a while. She said, but at least with your indenture, that it's easier. It's a less time frame because we're not giving you a license. And she also said that these crossings are non-revocable.
That's good.
Because it's in the indenture, it's not a license to cross. That's why she told me, go ahead and go ahead and move one of your crossings over. That way they can't come back.
And it does appear to be 30 feet, that's what the deed says.
yeah, these crossings are 50 feet now, or 30 feet, I'm sorry.
No, but when you read this deed document,
Yes.
The deed does say 30.
It
It's
does say
reserved at
30.
30, yes.
so my gut tells me it's gonna be 30. I don't know if she wants to start the variance procedure. I mean, what kind of timeframe are you looking?
We'd like to.
It is what it is. I mean, we'd like to move along as, we have a gentleman that is interested in the trailer park, and he's going with the, what is it, he's going with a 1031 exchange for taxes. So he's selling a trailer park in Saratoga, and he has to identify a property that he wants to buy within a certain amount of time, so he can, take that money and invest it and not have to pay the taxes on it. To a light, no, it's to a light property. So, we actually started this process about a week before he got a hold of us. So we told him we were in process. So, I mean, if it's gonna take 6 or 8 months, we might be in trouble and lose the sale. If it's gonna take 2 months, we might be okay.
But it's National Grid we're talking about, so
So
it would
it's
take us,
really
it
hard.
would take us up to.
But, our intentions are just one house. So we don't have any reason whatsoever to need 50 feet. Whether or not they're gonna give it to us, they're gonna do what they feel.
We have to have a national Grid decision before we can schedule the hearings. So, we kind of have their decision on what they're gonna do.
Right.
I like the fact that you're saying, and it seems to me you may be headed for a variance.
Correct. If you get any inkling from National Grid that they're not going to grant you the 50-foot right away, then you'll have to come in and we'll get you the paperwork for an area variance through the zoning. You have to go before another board of the town zoning board for relief of that 50-foot right away to the back property. And it's simple. We'll work you through it. It's some of the same stuff that you have.
Would that be easier to do? Because, I mean, National Grid, I mean, they don't call me back, nothing.
Sure, you can
emailed
come in,
them.
you can come in tomorrow and we can help you get your paperwork and get you started before the zoning board
Right.
next month.
But we still can't make a final decision, or a decision to make it, that's what I mean, you could go ahead and go deal with the zoning board of appeals.
We know they'll give us the 30 feet. We just don't know when they'll give it to us.
But that would say, that's the condition we assume we're gonna have,
Right.
and then you get a variance. If somehow they end up giving you 50 feet, you don't have to worry about it. We've gone through the variance process, but it'll be moved.
Now, they haven't told us yet if I have to delete the one crossing in order to get the other in right. We know this is all gonna happen, I just don't know which steps have to go first. If they're gonna say, yeah, okay, you're good, now go ahead and cut the other one off, or you cut the other one off, and then we'll tell you you're good. I just want to do that. Because if we go through all that, and then they
Consider the zoning board route.
Sometimes.
Or at least put our ducks in a row to
Yeah.
do it.
Right, I mean, it's really something, this is really simple, but I just hate to go through all that work and then for some reason have it taken away. For no good reason.
Well, the other thing to remember is, let's say, oh, we don't wanna mess around with wood. You can always say, I'd like another easement here, and what you're gonna get is
But you're gonna get a license.
you're gonna get a
not
license, a
indenture.
revocable license. So you wanna move that indenture, and that's what we wanna see moved, because it guarantees that that driveway will never get cut off.
Exactly, yeah.
Because National Grid's not giving those anymore. They
That's
don't
what she
give the
told me
license.
also.
Right. Mr. Lewis was telling us that even dealing with something on Warwick Road.
Yep,
trying to get
we
across,
made them go,
They've just been dragging their feet, so we have verbal confirmation that we can do this at 30 feet. We just have to take the steps, whatever we need to do to move along.
It was a little different on the last project. The applicant purchased right away from another neighbor to access to that parcel, and they
Right.
didn't go the route because they were only allowed a license. And it wasn't true to the board's because they weren't gonna, it can be revoked at any time, and then we created a problem, so we can't do it.
Right, that's something we don't want.
Yeah.
We don't want to go that route. So,
Only thing we have in our favor is they were never memorialized,
Yeah.
the crossing, so they can be moved around. So luckily, that's in our favor on that, but like I said, the only thing is National Grid can take forever, so especially if it gets lost in their paperwork.
and any approval we give you is gonna be contingent on that eventually.
right.
I think the advice is wise. One is we'll go to the ZBA, pursue the variance.
Okay.
And then, as soon as you can, get National Grid back, and if they say, yep,
Oh,
we
sure.
approve it, then
She'll be on.
we can then commence going forward. And I think if you're willing to live with a condition that says there will only ever be one residential unit on Lot 2 South and one residential unit on Lot 2 North, I think that's gonna play well with both us and ZBA.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't foresee us selling this property anytime in my lifetime.
No, but there'll be somebody down the road.
Somebody else.
They
Well,
have to
I
look- they
understand
have
that.
to
That's,
look
we
at-
wanted to come through, to see the whole meeting. We've never been through anything like this. So I really wanted to see how it all worked and whatnot. So I get all that. And just like Mr. Munter said, you gotta plan for the future and what's gonna happen and, everything go along with that. So I understand your position completely. We just have to do whatever.
Yep,
they
and
say
we're happy
we
to
do.
work with you as quick as we can. You're right, National Grid for all. And Tina, did we send this to county before?
We did send it to the county, did not get there in time to get up.
No, but it'll be going to them.
But it has
So the
been,
county
yeah,
will
they
be
should
reviewing
probably be reviewing it in July.
And they will.
I have questions on that. Because now that we're separating it, you have the park area. And I drive by here all the time, but I've never done the horseshoe around your
Okay,
place, so I don't
thank
even
you.
know. How, because now you're kind of cutting it off for folks to get around,
Yes.
right? And I know you have done some things, you said, well, people can still get around, because I've seen you do it, right? But how big are these roads? Because now now you're gonna cut it off, you're only gonna have one entrance in, and I think you have, is it 19 or 20 units in here? How
Well,
many
there's
are in
gonna be
here?
2 entrances on
Two
Town
entrances.
Project Road still.
One on each side. They're just gonna be,
They're gonna be dead ends.
the east entrance would be cut off at the power.
So there's Capel, right
Right.
here, you're going
Yeah.
up Atomic.
Yeah.
This road will still be usable, it comes all the way around, it's gonna stop. Here's your natural hammerhead.
Right.
All right, so it's gonna stop here, and then your second road is gonna come in here, and we're gonna build a hammerhead here and get rid of this crossing. So this crossing can be moved down.
Okay. And how wide are your roads? Are they big enough for a fire truck to get around
That
something
road
else
right
or
there,
an
it was
ambulance?
30 feet wide. Between 20 and 30 feet wide, the east road is quite wide.
We require 26.
Yeah, because I've never ridden in there, I don't know how big they are.
Well, large enough for a 26-foot fire access road to accommodate any, and there's been fires in there in the past.
Well, I know there have been because the sites responded to them, so.
Correct.
Well, that last one was across the street, it wasn't ours.
Well, I understand, but
Because it's like, yeah, they were going by and they saw them, thank God they stopped otherwise, because those trailers were right up top.
We actually about, I don't know, a month and a half ago, had a Family Dollar tractor trailer that was apparently lost and drove through. So, I mean, it's actually there are a lot of problems, so, garbage trucks in and out of there all the time and whatnot, so it's, there's plenty of room.
Yeah.
I mean, take a look at it, if anybody feels they need to be a little bit wider, they can be if necessary.
that wasn't my goal. My goal was that we thought about it. and
Yeah, they're not
that-
tight in any way, there's quite a bit of room, even when you're plowing, you know, moving snowbank back, the roads are still quite wide in winter. So I would make sure they're open.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, that's where we're at. So, pursue the zoning board as soon as you hear from National Grid. We'll consider going forward here. Bill will talk to you. If it's moving, you can do a conditional approval. But we'll want to know that that's got to be.
Yeah.
It all hinges on the 50-foot access. If you touch base with them and they feel positive with the 50-foot, we'll keep you out of zoning. If not, if you don't want to take the chance and wait for that decision, then we can start the variance process tomorrow. We can fill out the application.
Let's go that route.
Okay, then we'll go that route.
And if for some reason they do decide to grant us a 50-foot, it can just be added to it, we're good? Or would we be, let's say we got the 30-foot approval, and then 2 months later, they said, oh yeah, you're gonna have 50 feet, then that could be,
Well, if you've already gone through the zoning process, we're allowing you to go from a 50-foot. We require 50-foot, and you're gonna ask for 20-foot of relief on that 50-foot in zoning, and you're gonna shrink it down to 30, and if they approve that, then that's an approved access to that parcel in the back. If National Grid comes back and says 50 feet, then good, you spent your money on zoning to get an approval that you obviously.
And you may only build it 30 feet wide because you have the variance to do that.
Right.
But if you ever needed the room in the future.
okay,
you
well,
have
that
to
was
go
my
to 50
question, if
feet.
they do agree later on,
Yeah, then that's
then
yours.
that can be,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, once,
Yeah,
once it,
then we'll
once they
definitely
grant
go
you, once they grant you the 30 feet, it's there forever.
Okay.
Thank you
All right, thank
very
you.
much, thank you.
Is there any other business to be brought before the board this evening?
I just wanted to clarify one thing, our training is 4 hours, right?
Yes.
For the code.
Yes. So I found it very easy. The Association of Towns,
I did mine and it was pretty easy.
it was pretty easy to get it. I think this is a 12 training course, is it? You signed up for 2 or 1?
I just did a few
I
of
think
them.
it's 2.
2. So
I did a few of them, so we just
I
added
ended
together.
up with 4.5 hours because I did the 2 or 1 and the 1.
I did 1.5. I think I did like 5 or 6, I can't remember.
But just, Tina's documenting those, we're gonna get them, and then once we all have them, because theoretically, the town board is supposed to approve each class. And we've been going back and forth, but when I talked to Benny about it, he said, no, just document what they did. Yeah, because
I
normally
thought
what
it
we,
was per, the code says that you're responsible.
I'm responsible to make sure you do it, they approve it. But Benny said, if they get 4 hours of any online training, they'll accept it for this year. It's just, because it's just a tough year. I mean, normally what they do is just approve Saratoga County and the Association of Towns. So any training you take at either of those counts for your 4 hours. All right, there being no business before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to order.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Pat, have a good evening.
Take care.